So good to be able to gather together this morning as we share together in God's Word. Whether you're joining us online, podcast, or in person, we're glad that you are here to join us this morning as we share together. As we come together, and we started this process, this series of going through this mindset of beginning with the end in mind, to know where we want to be, to know where we want to go, but how are we going to get there, and what paths do we need to take to reach our destination? And so we've gone through this mindset and this process of taking us from where we are and to where we want to be, so we don't find ourselves years later, how did I get here? What went wrong? Well, it's the path you took. Last week we saw these wise words in Proverbs chapter 27, and it said, if you remember, what I asked for us to remember is the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Not only do we want to keep working on that same principle to understand, where we should go and what we should do and how we should to live and the choices we make, but it's the principle of the destination, that we understand that our destination is determined by our direction. So often we have such great intentions, we have good ideas, we have hopes, and we have dreams, but those things play no factor in reaching our destination if our direction is in the wrong way. If we're heading in the opposite direction, we can't achieve the destination that we desire. And so we understand this geographically, we understand this in the world of driving and the concepts there. But what about the daily applicable principles in our lives? The way that we live, and whether it's our relationships, whether it's our finances, whether it's our entertainment, whether it's our careers, the place that we want to be, the destination of our desire, determined by the direction that we continue to head. And so for us, we realize that it's all about making a decision. Decisions can be hard. We can waver, and sometimes it's over the simple things. What do you want to have for dinner? I don't know. Sometimes we make it so difficult, but when we think about the life course, the path that we're on, those decisions can be hard. And how do we make a decision worthwhile? That's going to lead us to the course where we want to be. And so we have to realize that while there's so many different things that we come across and different events that we are a part of, but we realize that it's not just an event, but what we're doing is by participating in different things, we're charting a course to a new destination. So once again, our direction determines our destination. So our prayer as we continue through the series is that as we continue to live life, that we would realize when we're on the wrong path, we're able to course correct and to make changes, because we don't want to look back with regret about where we've been. So we want to have the ability to recognize and to understand those things early. Once again, the prudent see danger and they take refuge. They change direction. So the problem is that we understand is the choices that we make today have lasting repercussions of things that we might not ever understand. The path we take early on in many different things can lead us into an opposite direction. The course you take early on in your relationships, in your marriage, will determine the course that it takes later on in life. The way that you parent your children now, those things that you teach now will have lasting repercussions, good and bad, for years to come. We will never understand what it was like until they continue to grow and you see the repercussions of those choices that you make. And so often we don't understand the outcome of our decisions until it's way too late. So we've missed out. And so we understand that some choices we'll be glad in and some we'll be disappointed in. But the realize is we can't go back. We can't recapture those moments or change those decisions. And so we have to realize that the outcome of our choices is a priority. The course you take now, whether in schooling, for a career, the training you have, it will determine your ability to continue to grow in that job. The practice you put now, whether it's health-wise, will have determining factors as we get older, and the medications you'll need to be on, and the practice that our diet plays a big part in our future. Our education now plays a big part in our training, in our development, and our growth. The principles that you have as a child, to practicing just simple things, all those have determining factors that grow. And so while it's there, it's charting a course for a much bigger future. And so on paper, we can feel like so many things are great. On paper, things look so good, but sometimes in practice, they just don't line up. And that's where we understand that the making that decision is so important. To understanding that is so important. The problem is, if someone came before you and they said, here's a list of everything, the outcomes, of all the choices you make, here's what it could be like. My fear, my ultimate worry would be is that even if we had this amazing resource that would tell us about the outcomes of those things, we would probably ignore it. We probably wouldn't take advice from it. The problem is, as intellectuals, we are smart. We have gained knowledge. We have life experience. And so we base so many of our choices off that. We'd have this book of resources, but we're ultimately going to go off of our own knowledge, our own insight that we have gained. But here's the thing that I want to ask you with, and I know coming through a screen it's a little hard to relate this, but ask this question. We consider ourselves smart, we consider ourselves educated, we have life skills, we have learned knowledge, we have knowledge we've gained just through experience over time. But here's the thing. For all the smart people out there, have you ever made a dumb choice? Now, if you were actually interactively jumping on, you're probably nodding your head or raising your hand, because it's true. All of us smart people have made a dumb decision at one point or another. Man, that was dumb. Why did I do that? See, we've all have been there. We've all have processed that. And there's the thing, though. Our dumb choices so often don't come from a lack of information, but rather, we have the information, we just choose not to follow it. And that's what my concern is, that we would give this information, but we wouldn't take it and make it applicable to our lives. See, you can go to the doctor and they can tell you everything that you need to hear. You can take notes and you can formulate a plan, but what happens is when your doctor says, these are the restrictions I want you to do, this is the dietary that I want you to follow, and then next thing you do it for a week, and then it's vacation, and next thing you know, let's not worry about it anymore. See, we understand that there's things that take place in our lives. One of the things we love activewear, we love to be comfortable, but at the same time, we're not active. We like the gear, but we don't put it into practice. And so just because someone would give you a book of outcomes of the things and the choices that we would make, I don't know if we'd actually refer to it. Or would we continue to base life off of our own information? And so today I want to look at a passage, and I know it's a little different passage, but this passage, it wrestles with this tension of what comes together in this mindset. What the passage is so relevant as thinking is that King Solomon was writing to remind us, and just to give us a little insight of what was taking place. King Solomon was the third king of Israel. He was born to the King David. He was an interesting perspective here, because what we understand is Solomon wrote 3 books: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon. Solomon was unbelievable wise in so many different areas of life. He had great insight, and even though he became king at an early age, he was a young man, King David passed away, and Solomon gains responsibility of this role. And not only this role, but he was also given the responsibility of a huge nation. He was given the responsibility to build the temple for the Lord. But see, in that process of becoming this young ruler, becoming this young overseer of a nation, becoming this overseer of this great project of the house of the Lord, Solomon gets this opportunity from God. And now, can you imagine this moment when he's interacting with God, and God reaches out and says, what would you like? What can I give you? Ask me for whatever you want. Now, talk about an open-ended question to the creator of everything, to the provider of all. And I think like this is like that genie in Aladdin moment here, that the reaction is everything's available. You want long life? Boom, you got it. You want great riches? Boom, you got it. You want me to destroy your enemies? Yes, please. Say the word and it is yours. And so God says, tell me what you want and I will do it. Listen what Solomon says here to God. In 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 7. Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern the great people of yours?" The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, "Since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been another like you, nor will there ever be." So God made Solomon the wisest person ever to live. Seriously, go read some of Solomon's writings. I mean, honestly, if you look at them, if you read Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, you realize that there's a lot of wisdom packed into those letters, coming from a guy years ago. And he was writing to demonstrate his wisdom, and they're still applicable to our lives today. So if there was ever someone who was able to say, "God, thanks for the information. I have all this knowledge. I have this wisdom." If there's anyone who could ever say, "I can fully rely on my own ability, my own understanding," it would have been Solomon. But when Solomon begins to ask, how do we choose the right path to take, he begins to answer that question. But he says he doesn't say what he would do, because he has a vast understanding, because I have my own knowledge, but I've been reading books. But rather in Proverbs chapter 3, Solomon tells us how to choose the right path. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5, starting there, says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil." In other words, in all things, in every area of your life, trust in the Lord. He doesn't mean lean into your own understanding. Don't lean into the understanding, the knowledge that comes from God. He says lean into God himself. Not a paraphrase, not our understanding, but lean into God himself. The answer to life is not in information. It's not an insight, but rather it's the person of God. He is the one who has commanded us to lean and to trust in him. So if anyone who could have bypassed this principle, who anyone could ever bypass this encouragement here to lean, it would have been Solomon, because he had the knowledge, he had the understanding. He is the wisest man alive. And so if there was anyone who could have said, "I don't need to lean into God," it probably would have been him. But see, this is not a one-time thing. This is an everyday thing. You have to keep deciding to trust him. You have to keep inviting God in to share in our days, to share in the things that we're processing, the good, the bads, the ups and downs. We trusted him with all our heart. And we lean into what it says, what? Not on our own understanding. That Hebrew phrase, lean, literally means to prop something up. Solomon was telling us that our tendencies to make decisions are based on how we see the world, or understanding what we have experienced. And so handling the situations and circumstances with discernment, we dissect them and break them down. He says, this is how I see it. This is how I would do it, this way. The way that I would handle it is just like this. And our natural understanding is to lean on our own understanding, to prop ourselves up based on our own knowledge, by the books we read, by our experiences. And so not trying to take away from studying, not trying to take away from learning from those who are wiser than us. We're not trying to take away from that at all. That we shouldn't read, that we shouldn't devote time in prayer and study. But he says, Solomon is telling us, no matter how much you know, how much life you've experienced, don't make the mistake when you choose a path and thinking, I am good enough for this. I am wise enough to lean on my own understanding. It's like all of those Holiday Inn commercials that we had for a long time. It's like when you see someone go in there and a crime scene or whatever, and they're solving a crime, or you have someone who comes in and performs this great operation. It's like, good job, doctor. How did you learn? And he says, well, I stayed last night at Holiday Inn. It's not that simple. And though sometimes we see that, well, just because you've been somewhere doesn't mean you know how to do it. I've flown on a plane doesn't mean I can land a plane. There's a big difference of what we experience. And because of that, we're tempted to trust in our own understanding every day, our own judgment every day. And yet, here we see the wisest person ever to live says, look, if you want to end up on the right path in life, direction doesn't precede this moment. In other words, what we have to begin to understand is direction begins with submission. Submission precedes direction. That we have to humble ourselves to the one who can give us the guidance to which direction we need to go. Sometimes we just head off because we say we know where we're going, and then we have to look at the map or the atlas or plug the directions into your phone. And what he says is from the start, we lean in. We don't lean in when we have need, but we're already there. We don't look for hope when we're lost, but rather we found hope before we left. Submission precedes direction. We begin to trust in the Lord with all our heart. I'm going to trust you, Lord, even when I don't understand. Even whenever it doesn't seem like it would be based off the things that I have already perceived in my own life. I'll trust you, Lord, with my relationships, my marriage, even though I don't understand all about marriage. So Solomon, in all of your ways, he says finances, relationships, careers, entertainment, your morals, in all your ways, not just our Sundays, not just in our religion, but in all of our ways, will we trust in him? Will we lean on him? Because we see that in verse 6. We see in verse 5 that we're called to lean. Not understanding, but verse 6 it says, in all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. At the end of the process, he will make our paths straight. In Hebrew, the translation means that he will make our paths clear. Simple. So therefore, submission precedes direction. That we would submit. It's easy to look back at our choices that we should have made. It's easy to look back and say, I wish I would have made that, or I would have started that sooner. Why did I wait so long to start something? But God says, as we submit to him, he'll help us work through all situations. Before we get to the point where you can't go back, you said, I wish I would have done that sooner. Rather than turning to God when we have no choices left, we've burnt all our bridges, God wants us to lean on him in the beginning. As we start our paths. As he helps make them straight for us, to clear a way, to point us in the proper direction. See, we don't need more us. We need more submission. We don't need more knowledge. We need more submission. For our family, one of the prayers that we have put in place in the beginning of this adoption process as we start out was, God, would you just make everything painfully clear, no gray areas. And I'll be honest, when it was painfully clear, when things were no's, it wasn't easy. But we knew where we were. And because of that, in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 7, it says, do not be wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord and shun evil. When we lean on what we can only see, our own understanding, is when we begin to falter. We begin to crumble, become weary. So it's like God is longing for our attention. He longs to share our heart with us. Like he says, I know many things. I want to, let me inform you. Let me walk with you. Let me share in this moment. It's simple to say, well, I've been making choices for 20 plus years on this thing. I've had life experience. I'm getting older now. But what he keeps going back to is this. It's not enough. And even all of us experience, Solomon continues to trust in his own understanding, experiences. Even Solomon crumbled in this area. Rather than trusting God to defend Israel, he decided to marry the daughters of the foreign kings to have an alliance. In this way, it made sense to him. Practically, but it was simple because here, now I have an alliance with everyone because we're family. But by doing so, he began to disobey God. God forbid that. See, Solomon didn't lack wisdom or experience. He had the insight. But what took place here is he began to lean on his own understanding. He divided his family, the kingdom, wrecked his legacy. And so when we think about the course we're on and the path we take, wisdom and information are not enough. We need God, church. We need God in our lives. We need to lean into trust into Him. Do not let your pride override wisdom. Don't let our self-importance override discernment. If pride overrides wisdom, remember, smart people can make dumb choices. Our pride tells us we have this, that we're a pro. And we think of how great we are, that clouds our judgment. Once again, it's not a lack of information. It's a lack of dependency, humility. Submission comes before direction. And so in this, have we ever acknowledged God in all our ways? I mean, have we really leaned in on Him in every moment? See, sometimes we only give things over to God when we know we're not in control. Lord, please be with my children. Please protect them as they go out, because I know I'm not in control. Those things are simple, because we don't have a choice. But if we were being honest, there's so many things that we're still clinging to control of. God, I want to entrust this into your hands, even things that I have control over. Since no matter how smart we think we are about something, it's submitting things to God. We submit it as if we know nothing. We stop living on our own judgment and begin to live on His. So taking all of those areas we have no control in. But what about surrendering the areas of life that we do have control in? Because this is where faith gets real. To keep our context here of travel and all of that, this is where the rubber hits the road. It's where there's real tension. Because we can say, I believe. Say, I do that. But it's saying, Lord, I want you. If we keep leaning on our own understanding, we'll find ourselves on a path you don't want to be. But taking out all these areas that we have no control anyway. But what about certain areas of life that we do? It's not just when all options are gone, our hope seems lost, but it's in the everyday. It's in the everyday that we have this opportunity. But we trust God in all our ways. That God, I look to you even in my own experience, in my own knowledge. Why are we afraid to acknowledge God in the areas that even though we feel like we have control of? That we would trust Him. Because once again, submission precedes direction. So once again, to read those verses, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. Will we lean on Him? Will we submit to his ways, trusting in him to clear our paths so our eyes would be set on the eternal glory and the destination with Christ?